Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way. The other day, I finally did something that I've been trying to do for the past, I have to say, like 15 months. It's definitely been over a year since I've been trying to do this thing. But this past weekend, I finally was able to do it. And it honestly just came up out of nowhere. Like, I wasn't actively trying to do this thing like 2 weeks ago. It just sort of happened. And I guess it always comes back to one of our fundamental needs. Like for me, when I first came out here to Northwestern, to Chicago, it was the first time where I was like super lonely. I've told this story so many times, but it's so true. Even today, like we all want to find our people, our ohana, our family. And so that's what I was trying to do. And being out here, I mean, there's not many Polynesians, there's not many Pacific Islanders. And so it's always cool meeting other islanders. And so I find out there's this Tongan dude who lives in the area. And I'm like, oh, dang. Not only is he a Pacific Islander, he's Polynesian. Not only is he Polynesian, he's Tongan. Like, this dude is probably family if I trace it back far enough. Like, I can find connections. But I find out about this guy, and I get his phone number, and I'm texting, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is such a great connection. Because I find out that he's some big time venture capital. Honestly, I don't know what he does, but he's a big time dude, basically. He's a dog. I find out about this guy, send him a text. I'm like, hey, I'm Tongan kid in the area. Would love to meet up sometime. And I wait a day, I wait another day, and then eventually he shoots me back a text. He's like, hey, what's up? Let's grab some time to have lunch or something. And then I send him some times that work for me. And then I wait a day, then I wait 2 days, and then I wait like a month or something because he just never responded to me. And so I think I follow up with him, and I want to go back through it right now, actually. So my first text to this guy was October 27th of 2022. So it has been at least a year. And then I shoot him a text. I'm like, hey, we should meet up sometime. And just through some follow-ups along the way. Man, that's crazy to think it was a year in the making. But then I think eventually I meet like his nephew, and I'm like, hey, I met your nephew today. Can we find time to meet? And then he was like, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I text her sometimes, it doesn't work out. And then eventually I connected with him on LinkedIn, made a couple posts, and then he reached out to me this time. He's like, hey, I see all the stuff you're doing. We should meet up sometime or something like that. And I think we relate it back to like rugby somehow. Somehow we get on the topic of rugby because he finds out that I play rugby and he's like, hey, my sons play rugby. And so finally, through all these things, we're trying to find time. I've tried for literally over a year to get in touch with this dude. And this weekend, we were finally able to meet up at one of his son's rugby games. Man, I don't know, something about rugby, it just brings the people together. But I pull up to the game, finally get to meet him. Super nice dude. And as we're talking, he was like, of course, the connections were there. I mean, just being Islanders, like we found a way to just vibe immediately. But he's talking and talking, and he's like, oh yeah, I thought you were farther away. Wasn't able to connect because I'm always traveling a lot. And then he said this, he said, but I do want to thank you, closing the gap. And as he said those words, he brought his fist together, like he was fist bumping himself, like, thanks for closing the gap. I just thought it was like the coolest thing, seeing everything come together, because the lesson of this story is try to find those ways to close the gap. Whatever that means, it's like, I think you can apply it to so many different domains, even in the startup world, like closing the gap between what the customer wants and what you provide. Or even in school, closing the gap between what the teacher is expecting and what you turn in. Like this idea of closing the gap, but especially in this context of building genuine relationships, really trying to close the gap of meeting people where they're at. And for real, just saying, what's up? I'm here to help out. Let's catch up. That type of stuff. I think that's what it's all about. And really, that's the whole project. So that's the whole mission behind what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to close the gap for Pacific Islanders around the world, like founders, businesses, you name it. I'm trying to close the gap. So I thought that was pretty powerful. So that was a pretty cool story that really resonated with me. And moving on to something that I've been philosophizing like crazy over this past week is this idea of integrity. And ages ago, I defined integrity as it's when your actions align with your words. And so your internal thoughts and desires align with your external actions and words. And I was trying to think through that more and more, reading some papers about it, some philosophy stuff, trying to get at what exactly integrity is, why this stuff is important. Because with that definition, realistically, like, taking this to the extreme, like this is just an example, but I think Hitler had integrity in the sense that I think his actions aligned with his words, or his actions aligned with his internal thoughts and desires. Because there's two ways to think about integrity. The first sense is coming from the same word as integer, where integrity is about being a whole, right? We get whole number, integer. Integrity is about being whole and being complete. And so this idea of aligning your actions and your words is where your wholeness of character, like even though you're a bad character, you're the bad guy, like if you're Hitler, like you still have integrity in the sense that your words align with your actions. And then there's this other sense of integrity that we use where we look at something and we're like, that person has integrity. Like growing up, the definition I've always heard for this word integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And that's something that doesn't fit at all with my definition of integrity. But kind of tying it into everything that I've been thinking about is, I think another way you can look at integrity is when you're being true to your dream identity. And depending on who or what your dream identity is, will dictate whether it's morally good or morally bad. And so maybe if you look at someone like Hitler and you say, okay, maybe he has integrity in the sense that his actions align with his words, but his dream identity is probably like some really evil character or some really bad guy, at least from my perspective. And that's where, even though he's being true to his identity, like his identity is just like an evil person. Whereas you get someone else like, I don't know, Mother Teresa. I think most people would agree that's a pretty good person. Like her dream identity is probably someone like Jesus, because I believe she was Catholic or some type of Christianity. And so you look at her, maybe her actions did align with her words, so she had integrity in that sense. But also, she was being true to her dream identity. Like the person that she wanted to become, that's who she was being true to. Like she wasn't trying to cheat them through talking all this stuff, but then on the private times of their life, they're just doing willy-nilly type of stuff. And then something that I found, it was like a quote from some article, but it said integrity comes with inner peace and self-respect. And so like most of these things like happiness, I see happiness like sleep, where if you're trying to go to sleep and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I need to go to sleep, I need to go to sleep, I need to go to sleep, you're not going to go to sleep. And because your mind is just racing and focusing so much on sleep, you can't even get the sleep that you want. I think happiness is the same way, where if you just tell yourself, I want happiness, I want happiness, I want happiness, then you're going to focus on the things that you don't have. And in doing so, you're going to realize that focusing on desires is what makes unhappiness. And I feel like integrity might be similar in the way that, like, with integrity comes other things. Like, with integrity comes inner peace, where you don't have to roll around in bed and be like, oh my goodness, I'm not being true to my dream identity. Like, having integrity means you can have some level of, like, self-respect, respecting yourself for what you're trying to do. And then also inner peace, being comfortable because your words align with your actions and you're not some fake posing. And probably the biggest insight around integrity that has really stuck with me is that it is so hard. Like, I can say all this stuff on this podcast, and that's what I've been doing for the past year and a half as this thing has been going. But integrity is so difficult because words are just way easier than actions. Like, it's easier to say stuff. It's so much harder to follow through on what you say. And I think that's one of the things that makes integrity so valuable. And I think that's part of the game. Like, if integrity was easy, then everyone would have integrity and it would just be a whatever type of value. But it's a virtue because it's difficult. And if it was easy, then it wouldn't be worth playing the game of trying to have integrity. And so that, I think, was a really big insight for me, because I'm saying all this stuff, trying to have all these words, when I know full well right now that my actions are not aligning with my words. Like, literally last night, I played Minecraft till like 3 a.m. Like, that's real talk. And so accepting the fact that there are going to be times where integrity is tough. There are going to be times where failure is inevitable, because that's life. Like, that's what integrity is. It's supposed to be hard. I think recognizing that fact has, at least for me, made it easier to be like, okay, this is all part of what it means to have integrity. And if it was easy, then it wouldn't be worth having integrity in the first place. So that's something I've been thinking about a bunch. And something else is this idea of rationality. I'm writing this paper right now, and the whole gist of it is that this guy called David Hume, he's trying to argue against miracles. And he's like, okay, even if miracles are possible, even if maybe, Jesus might have walked on water, or Moses did split the sea, maybe all those, maybe they happened, but even if they did, like, we shouldn't believe them. And if we're going to be rational, then we shouldn't believe them. Because here's his argument. We should believe claims where the supporting evidence outweighs the counter evidence. So we should believe with the evidence, or we shouldn't believe against the evidence, is kind of how it goes. These miracles clearly go against the evidence of everything we know. We have never seen gravity fail. Like, we've never seen someone literally defy gravity. We've never literally seen someone split a body of water. That's something we've never seen before. And miracles are exactly that. They're exactly against the evidence, so we just shouldn't believe them. And so he has this argument, and especially in philosophy, the way you think about that is you're trying to go and attack one of the premises. And in this paper, I talk about how sometimes we are entitled to believe against the evidence. And think about that for a second. What are some times where you might believe against the evidence, and how in some ways you might say, okay, that's okay for that person to do? Here's an example or a scenario that I brought up in this paper. Right? Imagine you have a patient, right? And this patient, they have a disease and the doctor gives them a 10% survival rate. Like, pretend this person is you. I'm going to give you a 10% survival rate. What are you going to believe? Do you think you're going to make it through this disease? And the answer would probably be no. Like, if you look at the evidence, you have a 90% chance of dying. And so you will probably believe that you'll die. That's probably rational. Now, how about this? If you believe that you will survive, then the odds of your survival would jump from 10% to 40%. And now this gets into like placebo effects, which is a pretty real thing. And so I tell you that, now what? Should you believe that you will die or survive? And this is, I think, a great example that illustrates this point, where in some cases where our belief influences the outcome, those are cases where we're entitled to believe claims that go against the evidence. And this is a clear example of it. If you go with the evidence, like, you are flying in the face of evidence by saying that you think you're going to make it out of this. But it seems rational because your chances of survival will increase. Like, it'll jump a whole 30%, from 10% to 40%. If you think you're going to make it through this thing. And so there's this distinction between epistemic rationality and practical rationality. Now, let me explain what that means, because I think I'm getting pretty high level, kind of complicated with this stuff. But the basic thing is this. Epistemic rationality is focused on the evidence. Like, purely, if you just look at the evidence, then you should go with the supporting evidence when it outweighs the counter evidence. And that's different from this idea of practical rationality, where, practically speaking, you going against the evidence will lead to better practical outcomes. It'll lead to you probably surviving more. It'll lead to maybe a miracle happening. And so that is another type of rationality called practical rationality, which is focused on outcomes. And I thought this was such a great way to think through things, like applying it to my life. If you take someone who's addicted to something, let's say they're addicted to alcohol, right? They're an alcoholic. If you look at the success rate for alcoholics overcoming their addiction, maybe it is completely skewed, or divorce is the same way. Like, if you get married and you say I do, the likelihood of you getting married and staying married is like pretty low, because divorce rates are extremely high. And I think I talked about this in the last episode, but this is the reason why you can go against the evidence, is because of practical rationality. Now, this opens up a whole nother conversation about, like, what can we apply practical rationality to? Because, like, maybe you suppose something where if I believe I can fly, then my chances of me flying will increase. But it just seems weird to say that you could do whatever you want. Like, if I believe I can go invisible, then the chance of me going invisible will increase. Like, something like that. That seems weird to say, but so this argument still needs more philosophizing through. But that's the basic idea, that in some cases, we can go against the evidence. Now, another thing I want to do is try this thought experiment, because I thought this was actually so profound to me. Like, this has resonated with me a bunch. Now, think back to a time in your life where you went through something super, super tough. And I'm not talking something like, oh, I failed my exam, or I couldn't get ice cream, or whatever it was. Like, think of a time where you lost someone who was really, really important to you. Now, you have that time in your mind, that experience that you went through, the pain of finding out that your loved one is gone. Now, fast forward to where you eventually leave this earth too. And even if you don't believe in God, let's just say for this thought experiment to work, let's say there's a God and you come to the end of your life and you get to ask God one question. You ask God one question and your question is, why, God? Like that thing that happened to you, that experience that you went through, losing someone who you love so much, and you ask God why. Now, for this thought experiment to work, keep thinking about this idea. What would be your response if God said, I wanted that to happen, and it was for your own good? Some type of response like that. Think about how that impacts you. And I think this thought experiment is super powerful. When I first heard about it, is because it challenges you in a way to where you have to interpret something positively. You have to, because you have to recognize that in all the mess that is life, what good came out of this terrible thing that I would wish upon nobody else. And this connects perfectly with something that I've been talking about, is this idea of a belief spiral, where one of the most powerful things that I think we have control over is how we interpret experiences. And this thought experiment, I think, forces us, or at least it forces me, to interpret those super tough experiences in a positive way. Where I'm like, oh, that's why that happened. Or, oh, this is the good that came out of that tough experience. And so I understand that this can be pushed to the extreme, because you can ask yourself, okay, why did God let 9/11 happen? Why did he let World War II or the Holocaust happen? Like, I think you can ask questions like those. And honestly, for those, you probably get into super choppy territory with trying to answer the problem of evil and stuff. But just for the purposes of this thought experiment, because I recognize that there's a bunch of nuance in there and you could push it to the extreme, but I think it is powerful in a way for you to, or at least me, to look at those tough experiences and try to be optimistic in the way that I interpret them. Now, a couple more things. I realized that I have a lot of bullet points or philosophizing that I've been doing. Another thing I've been thinking about is this thing called apologizing. Because here's a story. There's a friend that I talked to a bunch, and we basically talk like every day. And we'd go through each other's day, and I would talk about, okay, this is what happened today, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then I hopped on a call with this person. And we basically just go throughout our day. And I remember one time specifically where I talked about my day, and I said, I woke up in the morning, went through my routine, I hopped on a couple calls, got a workout in, and then this happened. And when I said that, the other person, they said, I'm sorry. And when they said, I'm sorry, I didn't really know how to respond. Like, how do you respond to that? Where you're like, you tell someone the experience of what happened, and they say, I'm sorry. And the reason I think it's like, kind of caught me off guard is because the thing that went through my mind was like, what are you sorry for? Like realistically, you weren't the reason that this thing happened. Like say for example, I don't remember exactly what I experienced that happened to me, but say it might have been me failing an exam, right? I failed an exam and this person says, I'm sorry. Like they weren't the reason I failed the exam. I was like, I didn't prepare well enough for the exam. And so in them saying, I'm sorry is like, what do I make of it? Because here's another thing I was thinking through was this definition of sorry. Because I think when you really say I'm sorry, what it means is I won't do that again. Or what it means is I'm going to change how I act in the future. Or I will change my behavior moving forward. And so it implies something about like how you are going to change behavior, how you are going to change what you do. And when you apologize about me failing my exam, like you don't have control over that. And so there's this idea of like, I won't give you control over that to say. And I realize that this is kind of coming off like harsh, but I think it's powerful because if I allow someone else to say I'm sorry for me, then I think that gives them the power. And it takes all the power from me, all the agency that I have in that situation. I think this exam example is a great analogy where I fail the exam, the other person says, I'm sorry. And in the way they're like taking on the blame for it. It's like, no, like you don't have the blame for this experience. I do. The reason I failed the exam is because I didn't prepare for this. And the other reason why it was so tough trying to respond to someone apologizing is because I know they're coming from a great place. Like, it's not like I'm trying to take the power from you and apologizing. They're probably just saying I'm sorry because they are genuinely sorry that happened to me. So I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, what is the point of apologizing? And I'll probably keep thinking about it because I haven't fully philosophized about this yet. But I just thought that was pretty powerful in that not allowing anyone else to apologize on my behalf. Where if I fail the exam, I'm going to say I'm sorry to myself. which means I'm going to change my behavior to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's all that means. And I feel like this idea of interpretation comes into it, where maybe I went through like a super tough failure. In that failure, I learned a bunch. So in that sense, like I wouldn't say I'm sorry. I would say like I'm happy that I went through that experience because I'm learning. And so maybe that's another shift where what someone else would interpret as a negative thing, like failing an exam, and they would say, I'm sorry, I would look at that and be like, I'm happy. So now I will learn from that and not let it happen again. And so I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm going to say I'm sorry in the sense I want to change that to make sure it doesn't happen. But I'm not going to say I'm sorry to myself in the sense that that was a bad thing. I hope I never go through that again. But I thought that story was pretty cool. Something else is earlier today, I was talking with like I guess you can call him like a mentor, but not really someone I'm close to. Just like a network call is basically what it was. And it was telling me about a story of in his early career, he had a super comfortable job. He would work through the ranks, already got promoted twice, made good amount of money. And at this point in his career, he barely had to go into the office. Like he rolled up probably around like 10 a.m., went back home around 3. Like he was chilling in this job. And then he gets a job offer from someone else. He's super excited because this job offer, like it offers him more money. And so he's super excited about this, finds out about the job offer. So he goes to a friend of his, and this friend of his is kind of like a mentor, but around the same age, and goes to this friend. He says, bro, look at what just happened. I got a new job offer, so I'm going to make more money, and then I'm going to do this and do that. And the other person listened to all this stuff, and they said, yeah, and then what? And then this person was like, oh, well, I'll make more money, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do that. And then the other person says, well, yeah, and then what? And I thought this was really powerful because asking myself that, and then what? Like, I'll go build a startup and recruit all these people and then make $1 million, make 10 million, whatever it is, the number is, asking myself, and then what? Because it forces, I think, all of us to confront the big question. And the big question of life is, what's this all for? I think that's the big question. And not even that, like, what are we going to do with this one shot that we have? Because even though you have this like goal in mind, like I'm gonna hit this goal, once you hit it, then you move the goalposts, and then it's the next thing. And then I'm gonna hit that goal. Now you work towards that thing, eventually you hit it, and then what? You move the goalposts. And so I think it's recognizing that there are infinite games and really trying to enjoy the game in the process. I thought that was super powerful. And then the last thing for this section is something I heard on podcasts going back to emotions, where he was talking about the differences between expressing, suppressing, and observing emotions. So when he was going about life, he recognized that people usually do two things when they have an emotion. They either express it, they have some sort of outward action, outward thing that they do to express the internal emotion, or they suppress it. They just keep it hidden. They don't really acknowledge it. They just move forward. But he opened up my eyes to a third option that we can have with emotions. And this third option is observing it. I think this is really powerful because it brings in this idea of like meditation and being self-aware and self-reflection, which I think is really important because observing emotions, like it's not expressing emotions that you always act on your emotions. It's not suppressing emotions where you just completely ignore it. Observing it is like acknowledging that you're feeling certain experiences. Like maybe your heart is rushing, or maybe your palms are getting sweaty. Observing that that is happening, and maybe from all those things, maybe you are experiencing like fear or anger or anything else. Observing that that is there, but then acknowledging that you don't have to act on it. Like you can just look at it and acknowledge it's there, and then let it go. Let it come and let it go, and then that's that. And I thought that was super powerful because I always thought there were only two ways to do it. You either express emotions or you suppress it. And I always went the suppressing route. And the way I would suppress it was like binging on food or playing Minecraft till 3 in the morning, like doing that. But I realized that there's this other option called observing emotions and just like from a third party perspective, looking at what's happening, letting it come, and then letting it go. I thought that was cool. But now, I'm going to skip over, at least for this podcast, the weekly wrap-up. Because honestly, I'm not sure how valuable those actually are. I feel like these stories are kind of connect more to not only what's going on in my life, but also, I feel like just more interesting because it's what I'm thinking about throughout the week and stuff. But let's go through it. First of all, let's talk about physical health, myself. Not sure if you could tell throughout this podcast, I mean, I just been congested. My nose has been super runny. I think I'm allergic to something, or maybe I'm sick. I'm not sure. But we're trying to work through it. In terms of taking care of myself, I would say kind of in the same boat as last week. Like, definitely not extremely amazing, but probably good. Actually, definitely good compared to considering the past 3 weeks. So, probably I'm making progress for sure in taking care of myself. So that's always good. Next is my people. I would say also very good. Like, I've been recruiting like crazy for the startup, and so getting to meet all these new people and bringing them onto the team, and really trying to see where people mesh and trying to genuinely care about these people is what I really want to do, because I'm not trying to be like, okay, we all join the team now. Everyone is just a number, and you get a grade for how well your output is. I want it to be like, okay, I genuinely care about you, and I want you to succeed, and I want you to do well in whatever your future career thing is going to be. So that's been amazing. And now with work, this is probably where the most updates are at, because okay, I just started this new thing called it's called a failure journal, and that's because earlier, like literally a couple hours ago, this some seniors were given their like spiel, biggest piece of advice. Honestly, all of them, or at least most of them, were like whatever type of advice. Like, you hear this all the time, but one of them I thought was really really good. He gave this whole presentation, was like, okay, here's what I did. I went on the Forbes 30 to 30 list. I got 1 million views on TikTok. I raised $400,000 for my startup. He listed all of his achievements, and on the very next slide, he was like, "Here are the things that people don't talk about. TikTok barely made any money. I'm still trying to find product market fit with the startup, meaning it's pre-revenue, so it hasn't made any money. The Forbes list, honestly, doesn't do anything for anything. Like, the best it does is make cold emails better because you have some authority." And he was like, these are the things that people don't really talk about. He was like, people all the time, they're like, celebrate the small wins. He was like, yeah, you can celebrate the small wins. Or not even that. He said, don't celebrate the small wins. He said, celebrate the massive fails. Because that is when major learning, that's when that really happens. So he said he had like this journal entry of 75 different failures that he's had. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so I wanted to do that. So maybe I can add that to like a section of this podcast, like L's of the week or something like that, where it's everything taken from my failure journal. But I think that'll be cool to keep track of failures along the way and then trying to see how things fit together. And honestly, one perfect example I can think of is me not getting a summer internship earlier, because there were a couple of times earlier this year where I was really trying to push and get that summer internship, but I just didn't get the final interview or the offer. And looking back now, if I did get those internships, then I wouldn't be able to participate in Startup or in Jumpstart, which is like this super cool program. And so that's just one of the things off the top of my head that I can think of. But I think that was pretty cool, starting that up, and we'll see what happens with that. Just found out that I'm doing the Bay Area program that I was talking about. So next school year, I'll be in the Bay Area for winter quarter. And so there was some classes out there, all entrepreneurship classes. I think that'll be sick, because one of the things I want to do is hold like this event for Pacific Islanders out there. So I think that'll be sick. And then this weekend, headed to Utah for our first Nexus event. It'll be a cool opportunity, meet a couple founders, pull up to the rugby game. That'll be awesome. And of course, like I mentioned, all the recruiting stuff that I'm doing. And I think the biggest takeaway is that I most definitely am bringing too many people onto the startup. Oh my goodness. And this is where I catch myself. Like, I talk about integrity. I talk about, oh yeah, your words should align with your actions. And then here I am, like, talking about how I definitely have too many people on the startup. And so I should probably most definitely get rid of some people. And I'm not. So the question is, what do I do now? I think here's what I'll do. I'm going to test run it, see how it goes, because I'm not sure about a certain person's skill on my team. I'm not sure about how their skills are in this certain domain of what they're doing. But depending on how the next couple weeks go, and if they can deliver like quality work with speed, we'll see how it goes. Because honestly, this whole thing is like just a learning experience. And maybe this is just one of those things where I learn it, take it under the belt, and then see where things go moving forward. But that's good. And then the other thing I've been doing is just, like, of course, rereading books. Tiny Habits, those have been good. Thinking about rationality. Well, yeah, my nose is super runny. Not sure if you can tell. School is almost over. Just wrapping up with all that stuff, and should be ready to go. I'm hyped to go into Jumpstart and just pour my time and energy into the startup, because It's going to be a wild ride, and we'll see where it takes us. But I'll see you in the next one.
I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.